Please be seated. About 15 years ago, I had a required course in homiletics, a class on preaching. They told us that you always have to begin with a good joke or a zinger, something to get everyone's attention. So here goes. What I just read in today's gospel is absolutely wrong, and I'm about to set it straight. Well, now that I have your attention, and before anyone calls Archdeacon Julie to report my heresy, let me clarify and correct what I just said. Luke's gospel is not wrong. Our understanding of it is wrong, and I'm about to set it straight. The first window, as Father Tom pointed out, represents the transfiguration of Jesus Christ on Mount Tabor, which we remember and celebrate today. But I tell you, we have it wrong because Jesus was not transfigured on Mount Tabor. Neither was Moses transfigured on Mount Sinai. He just looked different to the Israelites when he was coming down. Elijah was there also, but he wasn't transfigured either. Transfiguration means a physical change or a change to one's appearance. Yes, Jesus took Peter and James and John with him up to the mountaintop, Mount Tabor, to pray. Luke tells us that while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed. Okay, let's hold it right there, because this is where things go awry. First off, Luke wasn't there, but he probably became friends later with Peter and James and John, and most assuredly would have talked about this with them and asked them what they saw. What they saw. What they saw was the appearance of Jesus' face had changed, and that his clothes became a dazzling white. I submit that's how they remembered what they saw. What they remembered is that they saw Jesus differently. God did not change because God does not change. What changed is how they saw him. For the first time, they saw Jesus as God. We know from scriptures that the disciples had a difficult time grasping the idea of their friend, this ordinary kind of a man, Jesus. By the way, Jesus was a very common and ordinary name at that time. Jesus was God. The limitations of the human condition, sin among them, got in their way. They saw him as a man, just an ordinary man. The same way we might see anybody that we meet. What Peter, James, and John saw was an ordinary man who was now shining as God's presence among them. It was always there, but now they could see it, and they were changed. This story is about the transfiguration of Peter and James and John. They were the ones who were changed when they saw the true face of Jesus. And I invite you into that change. Yes, you too can have that experience. Same as them. It starts with, how do you look at people? How do you see people? Do you see gender, race, age? Do you see rich or poor, urban, suburban, rural? Do you see their political persuasion? Do you see their sexual preference? Do you see their geographical origins? of course you do. Everybody does. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't stop there. Regardless of any of those things that you just saw, you have to love them too. In our RV travels, my wife Terry and I spent a few weeks in Clemson, South Carolina. Clemson, of course, is the home of the storied Clemson Tiger football program. Directly across the street from Clemson's practice field is Holy Trinity Episcopal Church, where we attended for the few weeks that we were there. Visiting with the rector afterwards, she told me something that has stuck with me. You don't have to love Clemson football. You have to love people who love Clemson football. You don't have to agree with someone to love them. That can change how you see them. Some of our brothers just came back from a glorious weekend taking the love of Jesus. Let me change that. They didn't take it. Calling attention to the love of Jesus inside prison. I'll share with you the very first weekend I was part of such a ministry team inside a prison. Toward the end of that weekend, the participants were allowed, they were given an opportunity to come up and speak, share with what was on their hearts, what was in their experience of the weekend. One of the participants, a huge mountain of a man with chubby round cheeks and very, very dark skin and a soft, quiet voice, comes up to the mic. It took him a minute to collect his thoughts. Clearly, he was not accustomed to speaking at a microphone. He shared with us his name. He was 34 years old. And he told us that when he was 7 years old, he saw his father murdered in front of him. He never did well in school, and pretty soon school counselors and social workers gave him up for a lost cause. And nobody was surprised when at the age of 17, he was sentenced to life in prison. He paused again, and by now, tears are tracking down his cheeks. He said again, he was 35 years old. He spent half his life in prison, and today was the first time anyone had looked him in the eye and said, "I love you." With the light shining off of his wet cheeks, I saw him differently. I saw the love of God in his face, and I was changed. I was transfigured. Moses and Elijah came to Jesus then and there on Mount Tabor because he was going through a lot, and he had a lot more that he was about to go through. Do you know someone who's going through a lot here and now? Or maybe they're about to go through it. Of course you do. That's literally everyone. Could you go to them? What would you see? The Lenten season starts in a few days. Often Christians will use this time to decide to give something up from their life that's keeping them from getting closer to God. If you feel called to do that, then you absolutely must. We fully support you. And if nothing comes to mind that is telling you you need to give this up, well, maybe consider taking something on. I'm here to tell you this will change your life as you get closer to God. at least once a day for the next 40 days. Once a day for 40 days, commit to seeing God in someone's face or in some situation. I'll share with you that I did this a few years back. At first, it was tough. Some guy would cut me off in traffic, and I'm ready with the single finger salute. Not really, but I was tempted. The thought was there. And that's how I saw him. But I'd make myself put God's face on that driver. He was the same driver weaving through traffic, but now I saw someone who was frightened or suffering. I saw someone God loves. Do this, and it will change what you see. Soon, I started putting everything on God. And then I started seeing God in everything. It was an amazing transformation. At the end of Lent, of course, comes Good Friday. I looked at the cross, that specific cross, I'll tell you. I looked at that cross, and for the first time, I put God's face on that. I didn't only see an ordinary man who was suffering a lot for me. I saw how much God loves us. And I was changed. I was transformed. And I invite you into this transfiguration.